Hey everyone, I'm here with Jason Lapp, the CEO of Beautiful.ai. Hey Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Mitt. I'm excited to be here and talk to you.
So tell me a little bit about what Beautiful.ai does.
Beautiful is a AI first communications platform. We've basically made it really fast, easy, and fun to tell your stories and share your ideas through presentations at work.
Awesome. So you're interesting because I've talked to a lot of founders and you're the first CEO that I've talked to that wasn't a founder. I'd love to hear a little bit about, what brought you to Beautiful when you joined.
I spent about 18 years in the advertising world, and as a services industry, a lot of the work that you do is really focused on communications. And the primary tool in that business is presentations. So I had a lot of experience in the category of presentations and content at work and sort of formal business communications overall. I was introduced to Mitch Grasso, who's the founder of Beautiful AI. He developed and built the product. He had raised some money to take the product to market and had found product market fit really early in traction and needed a partner to figure out how to grow and scale the business. My background has primarily been not as a developer and a product builder, but more of a go-to-market and sales and marketing and business leader. And when I was looking for my next opportunity, I was actually looking for somebody who had a different set of skills than I did, and Mitch really fit the bill. And fast forward to today, we're sort of two sides of the same coin, where we complement each other. Where Mitch focuses on building the user experience, building the product, working with engineering and product, and then I lead the business as a CEO in terms of figuring out how to grow, how to partner, how to scale, and do the things on that side of the business.
That's awesome. How did you guys figure out that you were compatible? Because this seems like a very high stakes kind of job to take. He's giving up a lot of ownership. You're taking on something that was somebody else's baby. Talk to me a little bit about that.
I think this is part of our culture and our business, as well as we get into the rest of this conversation, is that I think there's a starting point, which is, I don't know, it's sort of like, to use a bad cliche, it's sort of like dating. When you meet somebody and you triangulate around communications and the way you think and how you perceive that person complements you and how you work together. I think Mitch and I got off to a fast start because we connected a lot on the what can sometimes be the harder stuff, which is communication, aligning on ideas and thinking. When put together, are pretty magical, because a lot of the things Mitch does, I was not trained nor have the experience to do, and quite honestly, don't give me the daily energy. And he feels the same way. So, I often say that, when I was younger in my career and thinking about becoming a CEO, and even in my first CEO job, I felt like I could do it all myself. Whereas what I've learned in finding a partner is you can actually do twice as much if you find the right complement to your skills.
That makes a lot of sense. So I'd love to talk a little bit more about kind of the vision for the product and where you guys want to go in the next few years. Can you paint me a picture?
Yes, I think there's a couple aspects of this. From a starting point, the original vision of Beautiful AI was really around this idea that most people are not designers by trade or by experience, and in the workplace, presentations are a core element or core medium for communicating your ideas and your thoughts, or presenting at meetings or sharing content. And what we found was that while people are not designers, it makes it very difficult to use a lot of the legacy products that people are given at work. I can remember when I came out of school, the first thing in my first job, I had to go take 2 weeks of training to learn Excel. And I think I had to take a PowerPoint class as well before I could start using the products. And those things haven't changed. And when Mitch built Beautiful, he really was focusing on, well, what's that user experience? How do I make it easier? How do I take all the difficulties and noise out of the process to get my ideas from my head onto the page. So that's where Beautiful started. And, it's interesting that, we started the business 8 years ago. And, Mitch named the business Beautiful.ai, well in advance of what we today know as sort of an AI technology innovation cycle, and AI's in a lot of different things. But really, that was sort of the cementing idea of, what are we trying to do? We're trying to make the software and the machine do the work for you.
Mhm.
We fortunately, over time, have been able to think about that user experience and get feedback from our customers in terms of what are things that will allow the product to move faster, make it better, make it easier. And as we've been able to build around more generative AI features into the product, we've been able to really pour fuel on that fire and create a better experience driven by some of those AI capabilities. I think, to answer your question, like, where are we going? I think the AI innovation cycle is moving very fast, but we envision that the product will continue to get easier and easier to use, to the extent that presentation should be, the actual writing and creation should be a tenth of the time you spend doing on it versus thinking about the ideas. And we really see that the product's advancing at that rate.
Yeah, it was really interesting. On your site, I really resonated with this idea of like, yeah, you have a presentation tomorrow and you're like busy kind of figuring out where all the pieces like fit and versus actually like, talking about it, which was cool. I'd love to dial in a little bit on this kind of the shift. You guys started the company a while ago, generative AI came. What was that transition like? Was there a transition, or is it fairly seamless as you guys started like seeing what was happening out there and you wanted to integrate features? Was it kind of a retooling of everything you did?
It's a good question. I think for us, it sort of hit at the perfect time. We had already built conceptually the model and the software around this idea of automation, driven by what we had built, which we call design AI, which is this concept that everything on the page is connected. So when you move one thing, everything automatically updates and adjusts,
Mhm.
so that you're not doing a lot of small iterations to get the task done. When you then started to layer in things like generative AI, which is, at the very surface inside of our product, it's taking a prompt and allowing you to communicate more directly with the software. That was sort of a natural evolution for where we were going with the product. I think the second half of your question, which is really interesting, around how did the generative AI boom sort of impact Beautiful, while we sort of had been building our product down a path that was very intuitive and easy to bring it on. I think the more difficult thing for us was the acceleration of our business. So we had really predictable growth. We had been working as a business to try to figure out how to become profitable and how to build a really efficient sort of foundation that we could scale over time. And then we got an influx of 10x the volume of customers and interest in the business in a very, very short amount of time. And that had a big impact across everything you could imagine, from customer service to the product team to what are we building. And it sort of changed even our product roadmap for the short term, in terms of needing to address what the market and what consumers wanted more than what we were really focused on, which was the user experience and getting some of that stuff right. So there was naturally some bumps in the road as a result.
Makes sense. So what's your pitch? Candidates have a lot of opportunities to join a lot of different places. When a candidate wants to join the company, what's your pitch on why Beautiful is a great place to work?
It's an interesting question from a pre and post sort of AI boom. When we were Beautiful.ai prior to the boom, and it was harder to understand the impact of this type of technology and what it was doing, we really are trying to be a product first company, and we're really trying to answer this idea that we want to make people's lives easier, and give them their time back. So a lot of what we focus on is what is the quality of life and the user experience. And as an potential employee, that means that you're focused on product and the end customer, no matter what seat you sit in. In combination with today's world, we're in a hot, fast-growing company, a hot category with a fast-growing company in the right space in terms of what's newsworthy, and we're delivering a product that people love, but we're also a remote company with incredible benefits and flexibility around PTO, and we're still a venture-backed startup in some aspects. So we look to make everybody part of really part of the business when we're offering them an opportunity.
That's awesome. I'd love to dive into that, that culture and how you all work. I saw some of the values on your site and I want to dive into a couple of them. But from your point of view, what is the culture at Beautiful? What are the things that the behaviors you guys reward, the things that you try to cut out? I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
I think values are interesting because as you grow and you go through different stages, sometimes they need refreshing. I'd take a step back from that in terms of like trying to describe the type of people that we have here. Is we look for really smart people, and smart not necessarily meaning where'd you go to school, but people who have diverse thinking and experiences that that others on the team don't have. We like low ego. Beautiful is not a very political or competitive organization internally. While we're naturally competitive in terms of wanting to build something and win in market, internally we're heavy about collaboration. Being a remote only company, it really requires incredible communication skills too. So I think when you come into Beautiful, you're often looked at in terms of like, how well does this person fit in? Can they communicate? Can they communicate well? Do they understand our language and lexicon about who we are? And it's sort of that I'm often looking for people who understand what we're doing enough that they can fill in the blanks or finish sentences with their understanding. So those things are really important because as a business, we're being remote. We are a Slack and video culture. In fact, this is the first company I've been with where email is very low on a priority internally. In fact, it only gets used primarily for external, and that helps us build sort of a pattern around the way we work in terms of we have an expectation of you're on time and your video is on, and that helps everybody connect with the human element and see people's faces and break through some of the things that are hard in this type of environment where you're distributed across the country in different roles and trying to cross collaborate across different groups and things like that.
When you think about the culture, do you find that this has become kind of an emergent bottoms up, these are the type of people we have, these are the behaviors that have seemed to work in the past? Or was this kind of a top down, like, this is the type of company we want to build, these are the types of people that we want to add? Like, how did all of these pieces come about?
Yeah, I subscribe to that. There's not really a playbook on how to do it right. We were starting from the ground up, and fortunate to both Mitch and I have an extensive amount of experience working with different organizations, different companies, different cultures, both from very small to very large. And I think that affords you the ability to sort of get a 30,000-foot view on what are the things in your past that have worked and not worked related to your ability to manage and lead and help people come into your business and understand what you're doing.
What's interesting about your career is that you've had a career across multiple different industries, like you said, multiple different company sizes and stuff. Were there specific things that you were excited to bring over and specific things that you were like, nope, we don't want this because basically from what I learned?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the challenges with Beautiful is we're going from a small company and we see the future of a very large company. And at each stage, you sort of have to treat the company a little bit differently. And there are people in roles that are really strong at different stages of the company. that are really important, and finding the right people for them and creating an environment of flexibility for both the business but also the professional growth is an important aspect of that, for the individuals. And I think one of the things that we've realized is that as a smaller business, it was every role requires you to wear many hats, and in a larger business, you tend to be more isolated with the job that you're hired to do. So as we've grown as a business, we've started to have roles that are more of the latter, in the sense that we need roles that are going to be consistent and not wear as many hats. So there's a lot of challenges in terms of building out a team of those people when you're thinking about the next stage.
So I'd love to talk a little bit about the key traits that you look for in candidates when they join your company. Like, what are good predictors of success for candidates?
Right. Relevant experience in our category. And by relevant experience in the category, it's I think everybody wants that, but it's not always easy to find, especially if you're trying to blend the perfect the perfect person with their experiences, in terms of, are they really good at their job? Have they had
Right.
experience doing what we've done? As a growing startup, you want to try to find people who've done what you've done before, so that they have applied experiences. Um, Looking for people who have been in productivity, in SaaS, in product-led growth companies is really important, in terms of them being able to get off the ground really fast, so they sort of have a basis for what we're doing. Um,
And do you think that's important because you're a startup, because you're a remote company, or just, you'd want this no matter what?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think training and teaching when you're remote is a little bit more difficult, depending on the level and seniority of the person. I think being a startup, we're often looking for people's experiences that we can leverage. It creates an amazing opportunity for that individual to come in and be a thought leader and impact the business very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are things that candidates can do to stand out that they might not be doing right now?
I'll say the number one is that candidates should. I mean, a very easy one is put your resume and your created digital background in a product like Beautiful or a Figma, or a way to articulate what you've done and who you are and the way you think. It used to be very difficult. I think, if you rewind 10 years ago, you had to go build a website,
Right.
uh, and some people had that skill, and I think those people still stand out when they have a
Right.
portfolio or a website. However, what I've found, and what's often for me as a starting point, when you're super busy and you're going through a lot of resumes, a lot of connections, and people reaching out to you on LinkedIn. I think the places I gravitate quickly are, having LinkedIn up to date and accurate is probably one of the most foundational things for anybody starting their career, or even 30 years in their career. But then digitizing your experience into something that's portable. So like Beautiful is a cloud-based player. So, anybody that sends me a link to their background, along with some of their ideas about our business, or just demonstrates that they understand what we're doing, it's a very quick and easy way to stand out, versus having a resume that's in a Word doc, and sort of going the more classically trained way to looking for a conversation. I think it's much easier if you can leverage technology to sort of put yourself out there now.
That makes a lot of sense. Have you seen Beautiful become a tool for job seekers, like where they're doing stuff like this?
Absolutely. In fact, I
That's awesome.
know I have multiple people that reach out to me that haven't been looking for jobs here, that have told me they got their latest position because they did one of two things. They either built their resume into a Beautiful presentation, and that got them in the door. Often today, the process, especially if you think about remote hiring, requires a lot of video and a lot of presentations. It's easy to have 3 to 10 meetings to get hired. And what I do hear a lot of people doing is using Beautiful as a means to present their ideas when they're asked to present or to show up to those meetings, and it makes them stand out.
Mm, that's very cool. One of the things you mentioned of like video and remote hiring, has your hiring changed at all through kind of the process of like these AI tools being more readily available? Like you hear about candidates using them in the interview process and stuff. Has that changed at all for you guys?
It has not. We've started to think about where AI belongs in the business, in terms of things that are creating efficiency or more productivity. Our core challenge is that we're growing faster than the resources we have. So often we're trying to find hacks and new ways to do more work or do the same job. So AI based tools tend to be high on the list of things to explore. We haven't looked at that from an HR or from a hiring perspective. We have a couple of recruiters in house, which um, they they might be using some AI tools to help craft job descriptions
Sure.
or help with the marketing side in terms of like putting things out there to better articulate what we're doing versus being generic.
But you're not seeing anything from kind of the candidate side. You know, some companies that I talk to are like, oh, yeah, I want them to be using ChatGPT in the interview because I can see that they're actually, using the tools available to them. Others are like, no, 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 we want to make sure that we screen out like the people that are using AI in the interviews.
Yeah. Oh, if you're talking about from that side,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a slippery slope. I think
Right.
that uh, AI is an enhancer to if you know your weaknesses and you can leverage it to round out your writing, round out your positioning is great. But we see plenty of people who have used AI, and often it's perceived like an AI to do the entire job is write my resume,
All right.
write my pitch, and to be honest, sometimes if you see it right away, you think your immediate reaction is that's lazy,
Yeah.
not smart.
Right.
And but it depends on the quality and the output and how that person surrounds sort of that connectivity between I'm leveraging AI because I want to be able to show off everything else, not
Right.
because I want, the answer faster. And our product has uh, AI prompting built into it. And I've
Right.
seen in our interviewing process, I've seen plenty of candidates who have shown up and just simply put in a prompt and it wrote the presentation for them. And it's obvious. And that's
Right.
the hard thing.
Right. Yeah, I think it's one of the things that I hear time and time again. It's like, it's as a tool, it's good. But the thing that helps a candidate really stand out is like they've taken the time to kind of understand the role, understand the company, and truly kind of apply in a way that takes those things into account versus kind of mass applying into a bunch of places. Just kind of like round this out. Like I'd love to hear from you as like CEO or about the company, kind of what are the big opportunities going into 2025 and potentially the big challenges for you guys?
So on the challenges side, I think one of the, we talked a little bit about this. We're growing fast is always a challenge. It breaks some of your focus and your attention
Yeah.
to all of the details. We as a company who's I think we've tripled in size in the last 2 years and plan to continue to double. Like a lot of our focus is around how do we hire well. The challenge of today, we're a 50 to 100 person organization. So even as I reflect on our conversation, I think about context of some of those things. They're really related to the size of the business we are.
Yeah.
Whereas today, one of my great advantages is as a CEO, I'm part of the hiring process for every employee, and it's important to me.
And is that important to you to maintain the culture, or what's the reason why it's super important to you that you're part of the hiring process?
I made the commitment. Um, I think this reflects on some of your question from earlier too. Is like what did you learn in other companies, and how do you take that experience into what you're doing? And I think being fortunate enough to be at the beginning of a company and like thinking about how do you shape culture, how do you do the matchmaking to make sure that departments and functions and the different silos in the business will all gel. There's a lot of nuance in interpersonal communication and who people are and how they represent themselves and like their diversity of ideas. So that's always been an important factor for me. And if you're the CEO and you get to put a little bit of a lens on that to help shape where you see the business today and what you think it'll look like when you're 300 people, I think it's critical that you're involved in, somewhere in that process. For me, it was I love to talk to people. I can't wait to meet the future employee of Beautiful, so I find 30 minutes before we make a final decision. I also find that we're a very flat organization. We've got sort of leadership, and then the rest of the staff are primarily individual contributors in their roles, and that's great because as an organization, it's really fun to work for because if you're in CS and you need my time, I'm available. There's no barriers to reaching out. Yet it also creates this opportunity that we can all be on the same page about who we want to work here and how we hire and the process of which we do that. And I find that it's good for me and my leadership team to be triangulating for every single person on like those same questions about like, do they fit our culture? Are they the right person? Do they have a diverse enough experience? Do they have the drive? And do they meet the things that we all see together as being successful in the next couple of years? So it's very important to me. I think it goes overlooked way too often.
What's your advice for other founders that are maybe in the same kind of space? They're about to grow a lot. They're worried about, how their culture might shift as they grow, maintaining maybe their hiring bar, maintaining their culture, throwing away parts of their culture that might not matter anymore. What do you tell founders that are kind of in a similar range as you kind of are?
I often fall back to the things we're doing versus giving advice.
Hmm.
So I think one of those things being being involved in every hire and being very clear about the type of people and type of company you are and the tone you want to set is critical. I think it's hard to give advice depending on the type of person that leader is.
Sure.
I tend to lean a little bit more extroverted, want to talk to people, want to engage, and some people have a different style of leadership where they're a little more introverted or they've learned their success through more hierarchical sort of organizational structure, where, as I explained to you, we're very flat because it allows more agility and flexibility. So it's hard to answer that. I think the things that have worked well for me, especially going through sort of a hyper growth stage, having a strong HR team and people team. We tend to use the word people versus HR just as a starting point. And people meaning culture. What are those vision value statements that we want to represent as a business? But that starts with who's your recruiter and who's onboarding them into the company and what does that experience look like. And we have an amazing team here that I consistently get unprompted feedback from new employees after they've been here for 3 to 4 weeks, and they rave about that experience. So they get a really fast starting point in terms of like learning about Beautiful, getting up to speed, understanding like where they fit and how they should work in a remote environment.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, last question. I cut you off on the opportunity. So we're going into 2025. What are you most excited about?
Wow, there's a lot. I mean, the aside of the fast-paced growth for our business, there's a lot going on in the category we're in. So thinking about the innovation in the space of how AI is helping us accelerate the product is something that I'm really excited about. I'm also excited about for us, our next growth stage, this is maybe a little in the weeds, but when you're a 10-person company, your stress and your focus is very different. When you're a 60-person company, fast, quickly growing to 100 people, there's just tons of things you couldn't do before in terms of people you can hire, things you can invest in. So we have a lot in front of us that I'm really excited about as a business. I also just feel generally that the economy and the market are seem to be for the moment in a very good and positive place that's going to lead to a lot of great opportunities.
It's exciting. Awesome, Jason. Thank you so much for your time. It's really awesome to hear about the company. If people want to learn more about Beautiful, where should they go?
Beautiful.ai.
Awesome. Thanks again.